Hey Amarillo, I'm Jason Boyett, and you're listening to Hey Amarillo, the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. As part of this podcast partnership with Brick and Elm magazine, I want to give a podcast shout out to Bloomology, The Shop event venue, and Selena Fogg CPA. You can read the January-February issue of Brick and Elm at brickandelm.com, and what I'd really like you to do is check out our new digital magazine e-reader. It's optimized for mobile. It's super cool. You can find a link to that at brickandelm.com. Today's guest is Greg Lusk. Greg is a horticulturalist and the executive director of the Amarillo Botanical Gardens, which is a bit of an oasis in Medi-Park from the typically arid landscape of the Texas Panhandle. It's a really cool place. And in addition to its indoor and outdoor garden spaces, it's a popular event center. And in recent years, it's gained a reputation for Christmas in the Gardens, which is just transforms the grounds every December with holiday lights. And Greg himself has an interesting story beyond the botanical gardens. He went to college to become a horticulturalist and then spent the early years of his career as the personal gardener for none other than Amarillo legend T. Boone Pickens. Pickens was the billionaire founder of Mesa Petroleum. He was one of the most influential figures in 20th century American business, lived here in Amarillo, and Greg was his gardener. So we talk about that. We talk about the origin story of the botanical gardens and what it means to pursue a living growing green things in a harsh landscape like ours. Here's Greg Lusk. Greg Lusk, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor to have you. I know that we've worked together I've interviewed you multiple times for magazine projects and stuff like that, but I want to start with you the same way I start with all my guests, and that's just to ask why you're here in Amarillo. So what brought you to this area?
Well, I grew up in southeastern Colorado, which was only about 3 hours from here. And when I wanted to go to college, I wanted to be away from home, but not terribly far. And I don't know, it just worked out. I got some good scholarships here.
Okay.
And it was close enough I could go home on the weekend to see my girlfriend if I needed. And so it really just worked out well for me. A
lot of people in the rural parts of southeast Colorado end up at WT. I know that like that's a highway I've seen.
Yes, it is. I see people often that I know from there. We actually came down here a lot. Where I grew up in Colorado was closer to Amarillo than Colorado Springs.
Really? Okay.
So if you're going to do real shopping, car shopping, real clothes shopping, anything like that, we would doctors. We would come to Amarillo.
Okay. Did you come from like an ag background living up there?
Yeah, my father was a music teacher. He taught in public schools, taught music. But my grandparents, yes, were producers of vegetables, fruits, and farm products.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the nearest town? Where did you grow up?
Campo, Colorado.
Okay.
Just barely in.
You're just like right over the line then.
Right in.
Tell me, when you decided to go to WT, was there a plan? Did you have a career path in place?
My dad never liked what he did. He loved kids and he liked music, but he hated working with some aspects of teaching.
Okay.
And so he griped a lot. And so I realized then that the best thing to do was to do something you enjoyed. Mm-hmm. Whether it made a lot of money or not, it didn't make a lot of difference to me. I just wanted to do something I enjoyed. And even as a little kid, I enjoyed gardening. My grandparents gardened, and I always had a garden. I have pictures when I was pretty little, having a big old garden. And I always just enjoyed plants and doing that. So that was my career path. I really thought first of probably garden art or landscape architecture.
Okay.
First.
So is that like a horticulture degree?
I have a degree in horticulture.
Okay.
Yes. From WT.
All right. So yeah, landscape architecture is one career path. Did you end up moving very far down that path?
Well, just horticulture. Yeah, really that wasn't set up in WT for that. Mm-hmm. So I really knew what I wanted to do was just to be immersed with plants and deal with growing plants.
Okay. So what did that look like then after graduation?
Well, after graduation...
You can't make a living as a backyard gardener. I guess you could survive that way. But yeah.
Depending. I did for a long time, actually. Right out of college, WT, I got some awards there. And T. Boone Pickens had just built the big house. Well, he had it already built, but he had improved it and increased the yard greatly. Bought the neighbors' houses and tore them down and stuff. And my first job was with Boone Pickens at his home. As
like his landscaper? Or?
As his personal gardener.
Okay.
And my wife and I, we were just newly married, and we lived in a fantastic garage apartment in his backyard. His backyard was my front yard, and my address was Woodstone number 1, just like Boone Pickens. It was pretty neat. Pretty neat for kids that came from just off the farm and watch how they did things and be part of that. And
what was the timeline for that?
It was in 1984.
Okay.
1984. And then he left Amarillo in 1987. So I worked for him about 3 years.
How big was that garden?
It was, there's botanical gardens that are probably smaller, but it was very intense. And I also worked at his ranch out by Canadian.
Right.
Actually, that was pretty cool because there was
a lot of space out there.
Early 20s. And sometimes I would fly on his plane to work. I'd work out there and fly home. It's pretty neat for, a kid that hadn't been exposed to very much.
Were you growing things that he wanted you to grow, or did he say, just give me a really great garden? What was the goal with that?
Well, his wife was really the gardener. He didn't really care.
Yeah.
Everything was show for him, and he liked everything. But we actually got to be good friends because he knew that I didn't know any of his people. He could be himself, I felt like, around me. And he had no experience or no real interest in what he did. So he'd come out and talk to me. And in fact, after he moved away, he would come back and visit just because we just had kind of a connection that wasn't based on anything but just who each other were. And so it was kind of an interesting relationship.
He was, mid-'80s like that. He was definitely a larger-than-life figure. Yeah. At that international reputation.
Yeah, he was 60 then. He turned 60 while I worked for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you go into that thinking, okay, this might be a long-term kind of thing? Let's, hold on to this relationship because he had so many people in his orbit, that he was so successful, that's the kind of person you want to be around? Or did you think, I'll do this for a few years and then I'll find something else?
No, I really kind of thought I would. It worked out well for me because his influence and the people that came and visited him and see what I did, I ultimately ended up working for them afterwards. I had a small business after that, and I continued to work there for Dr. Berg that bought that home, and the Woodstone as well, and other very select people. I wasn't just pushing mowers all around town. I was doing real horticultural work right there with people that could afford high intensity work like that.
Is that something? We joke a lot about the climate here. It's designed to kill your garden. Was that something that you found enough success doing? Did it take a lot of money to really make it work? Did you need to work for some of those high-end people to, protect against the elements, to make the growing season longer than it needed to be, that sort of thing?
Well, yeah, there's always tricks, but actually, I really like our climate.
Okay.
It varies a lot. It's never boring. It's got some challenges, but all those challenges can be met. Lack of rain, that can be changed. The hard thing is the wind and extreme temperature fluctuations are hard to kind of deal with. But by choosing the right plants and seeding them right in their yard and stuff, you can manipulate all of that and grow a really wide range. At the Botanical Gardens, we have about 100,000 visitors a year, and people that visit gardens stop. They're going through Amarillo, and they seek us out.
There's a type of traveler that wants to go to a place like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we get people, believe it or not, from around the world, not so much since COVID. COVID really changed that, but certainly around the U.S., and they're always very surprised the wide range of plants we can grow. Stuff from the northern states or cooler climates, clear down to subtropical stuff with some manipulation of the climate. But a lot of them are stuck in a zone. We're right in the middle. Right. So they have to grow something, that only can grow farther north or south or west. And we're can grow some of everything, and it's kind of fun.
Before we get too deep into the botanical garden side, when you were sort of a private landscaper, botanist, whatever you called yourself back then, horticulturalist, like were you growing anything exotic for some of these clients?
Oh yeah, they demanded unique and interesting.
They weren't just growing carrots and tomatoes in their backyard.
Right. They like that too, but not so much vegetable, more ornamental stuff.
Okay.
It's kind of about the presentation. A lot of it was cutting gardens and just beautiful spaces. And I always try to mix, a lot of the people realized they didn't know a lot, so they just gave me free reign. And I always mixed a lot of stuff in, tried stuff, did a lot. Nobody kills more plants than I do.
Yeah.
But I have an excuse. I know why it died. It didn't just die. I know why. And it lots of times just because I'm experimenting with something that's not going to work, but I keep trying, and sometimes I have some great success and have fun with it.
How long did that period last?
Until I took a job at the Botanical Gardens in 2009.
Okay.
It got harder. I needed to grow, and growing meant doing more business part of it, being out less. It's hard to have people run around in your vehicles, and people get and equipment. So it just I was getting farther away from horticulture and more into a zone and a lot more mowing and just trimming and stuff like weeding beds. And I just wanted something that was more constant, more year round. Somebody else was paying the bills, and I could just do what I liked.
Yeah. There's for people that kind of had to hustle and run their own business for a long time, sometimes it's nice to find stability.
Right.
What was that business called when you were working
just
for yourself?
Lusk Landscaping.
Okay, that's all right. So I want to talk about the Botanical Gardens, what it's become, but I know it also has a history that a lot of people don't realize. They've seen it because they've gone to see the lights, or they've had an event there. I mean, there's so many things that happen there.
Right.
But they don't realize the depth of that organization. What can you tell me about how it started?
Well, its beginnings started in 1920 or so, when people were kind of settling in here in the area and setting up home or going to stay, and started gardening. A lot of people from the east that had gardens, and they wanted to garden. So they needed information from each other about how to grow this and that. And so they formed clubs.
Okay.
And my parents and older people, they're still clubs, but they're not like there used to be.
Right.
There was every club in the world.
Bridge clubs. And
yeah. And at one point, Amarillo Garden Center had 13 clubs. There was, the Orchid Club, the Rose Club. There's still the Iris Club and the Southwest Garden Club and the Herb, Club, and some others. But a lot of those have kind of gone away. But they needed each other's information, so they formed these clubs. And then they started realizing they needed a place to meet. They were meeting at people's houses and stuff, and these groups got large. And so they started fundraising in the 50s for the present place Botanical Gardens.
Okay.
And the park was going to be built.
Right.
And
it was still being planned at that point, the entire Medi-Park area.
Yeah. And I'm not sure exactly when the park started, but I have pictures of it. Looked like it was just kind of still getting going in 1967.
Okay.
And that's when they purchased that, or acquired it from the city, that portion of land for the Botanical Gardens. And it was a garden center. It was where the clubs met. They fundraised. They sold plants and burritos and bread and whatever. and built that building, and did a great job planning that out. And but it was on a small piece of land. It was very very small, and they just gardened around it. It was just club mentality, which is great. But then they hired Jackie Wilson, and she had the mentality of expanding, and they wanted to expand. And so in 2000, it became the Amarillo Botanical Gardens, and they expanded. And they worked for several years and fundraised and built the conservatory and expanded the size, and kind of brought us to where we are. I started in 2009, and Jackie had left, and there was a lot to be done. It was kind of a lot of...
What was your first position there? Did you come in as executive director?
No,
or just as a horticulturist? Okay.
Yeah, and it just... a lot of blank spaces. It was chiefly volunteer driven, and there's some great volunteers, but it's hard to kind of improve things on just volunteer help, you know. And they did a great job, but I came into a real challenge, and I like challenge. It was not a mess. There was potential was there, but I worked very hard, and I enjoyed what I was doing. I had some great volunteers and help, and we've expanded since then. We've taken a little more to the park, and so it's all full, and we are looking at expanding into the park to the south and south and west. We're going to build a butterfly house there, and some stuff like that. Hopefully, a large education building. So we're always looking forward to expanding and growing, and that's where I fit into it.
Has it always been a popular event center, or is that something that's happened more recently?
You know, they did weddings for a long time at different events. It's just our giving climate has changed. Used to, people gave more, and there was some big money here in Amarillo. There still is, but there weren't quite as many hands asking for money, and a lot of the big donors have just passed away for the gardens anyway. And I hear it from other nonprofits as well, and so we have to work harder for each dollar. And I think the mentality of people now is, you know, they work hard for their money, and they want you to see you work hard too. So we do events out of a lot of it's necessity. Because since we're a nonprofit, we don't receive any tax dollars from the city. It's just what we can bring in from events, rentals, donations as well. We always appreciate donations, but we've grown it, and it's a great place for events.
I mean, it's a unique environment. Yeah. Like, you're not going to find gardens like you have at any of the event or wedding centers or other places like that.
No. And the opportunity for photos and stuff like that. And then there's so many different venue areas. There's inside and outside spaces, and so many different types of gardens where you can have tropical looking photos, or you can just, you know, desert or a typical English garden look, and so many different styles that you can plug into. And then it just became kind of a favorite place. We do over 300 events a year now.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's counting everything, but that's a lot of events. And but it's important to us because those dollars help keep us going.
A lot of people's introduction to it, if it's not some event, has happened around Christmas time.
Yeah.
Tell me how that idea started and sort of what drove that.
Well, I've done Christmas lights for a long time. It kind of hit me one time, like I've been doing this a long time. I've got a picture when I was a WT student, not knowing that I was going to work for Boone Pickens, but I have a picture in the paper of hanging lights around Mesa Building.
Okay.
And had never done it, just was willing and needed money because I put myself through college. And the paper came down and took pictures. That wasn't a common thing then. That was like 83.
Yeah.
It was horrible. I was up on a lift and didn't know what I was doing, but I got it done. So then everywhere I went, I was doing Christmas lights because there's a lull of, there's certainly no gardening.
Yeah, a lot of landscapers will end up doing that.
Yes, so. There's nothing to do but Christmas lights in November, December. And so I found myself doing quite a bit of that and enjoying it. Actually, I really do enjoy Christmas lights. It's kind of sick. But when I went to the gardens, they weren't real excited about it. So the first year...
So you pitched that idea at first.
Yeah. The first year I pitched it, and the executive director then was like, well, I'll give you one night. Well, I'm not going to do a lot for one night, but we orchestrated it with the hospitals, and I had a choir come out, and we had a countdown, and all the buildings out there turned their lights on at one time. And but it was pretty well attended and received. Mm-hmm. And so we just, like the next year, I was like, well, they were like, well, that was pretty good. Let's do it again. I was like, I'm not going to do it for one night. I'll do it for a week.
Yeah.
And then each year I was just like, they threatened them, okay, I'm going to do it. We're going to expand this. And so Kevin Ball was the executive director there, and he bought into my vision, and seeing that there was no money coming in December, particularly to any gardens in the U.S. We did a few Christmas parties. But he understood what I wanted to do, and we just made it what it became, and it's become something we can't let go of now.
Yeah.
It gets us through the winters. It's a huge part of our yearly income.
How many people come? Came last Christmas?
Between 30 and 40,000.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and over a month, and they come from far and wide. They come from Lubbock and from Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Oklahoma. So they come far and wide to see it. A lot of people come each year. It just became something that's, I think, is unique and interesting. My idea really was, there's a lot of great lights in town, and you can drive around your car and see them with family, but to get people out mm-hmm. and to walk around and interact as a family unit or friends or date or what have you, and enjoy being outdoors together in the Christmas lights. So it's worked out well.
Tell me about the kinds of people who travel and seek out a botanical garden when they are coming into a new place.
Well, there are people like me. When I travel, I always seek out the botanical gardens, and I always go and find them, even if no one goes with me. They're just all sorts of people. A lot of the people that are traveling. It's surprising how many young people. I don't see it in Amarillo as much as it seems like everybody from somewhere else appreciates that kind of setting a little better than Amarillo. It's kind of, I hate to say that, but I see that. Like one group I really noticed during COVID was that we have virtually no hospital staff come to the gardens during the day, like right. on their breaks and stuff. And I just don't think they're encouraged to, and we can't seem to crack that nut over there. But during COVID, there was a lot of doctors and nurses that were traveling.
Sure, yeah. They
all come over there, and they were all like, thank goodness, we're just steps away from the hospital. That's a sick and negative place. Mm-hmm. It's full of, it is. They do a wonderful job, but during that, it was a horrible place. They understand the value of getting out to a clean, open, healthy environment for their own mentality, and they came on and they're like, yeah, we always go to botanical gardens wherever we go. And we just can't get that to happen, it seems like.
Well, a lot of it may be culturally because we just, people like to talk about how nothing grows here or how dry it is or how brown it is.
I agree.
And we kind of feed into that negative part of it without realizing that there are ways to grow things, like you said. And so if you grow up in an environment where you're not surrounded by greenery, you don't seek it out in other places sometimes.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Tell me about, it's interesting to me that you operate a nonprofit and the product you provide is, living things that you can grow here. Sometimes you have to fight against, the climate to make that happen, as opposed to a nonprofit, that's working with people, that's feeding kids. Like your product is to foster this kind of growth and beauty. That's a little bit different mindset for a nonprofit. I wonder how you sort of think your way around that. Maybe when you're asking for money too.
I feel like I am providing like more of a service to people. I think I see it as a healthy place for people to come. I see the people's face when they walk in, like at Christmas, and the little kids got their heads down, and then they see all the lights and they whoa, and they cry when they have to leave. I see it as a service more than the product for our community.
Okay.
And I really do see it as an educational service for our community. I've got a really great volunteer teaching group that do a phenomenal job. We see around 3,000 kids from the area each year, field trips
and stuff. Yeah.
And what we do is perishable. So it constantly has to change. And to keep people coming back, it constantly has to change and evolve and be fresh and different. So it's not like getting your electric bill paid. It's something you don't have to go do. And I don't think, like you said, that people are taught that that's healthy for them. We do a lot of community service, people that are on, and it's part of their probation, and they love it. They come out there, or they hate it. Either one.
I mean, it beats picking up trash on the side of a highway, though, right?
But a lot of them are like, this is such a healthy place. I feel so much better when I'm here. And they come and work for, weeks and weeks and get all their hours done. And then the next person might come, and we never see them again.
Yeah.
They don't say anything, but it wasn't for them, which is perfectly fine. But I think we provide a service that, you could leave or take. And I think we have to work a little bit harder. People aren't just seeking us out for like something where they get food or something like that for basic needs. But once they do come, I think they recognize our value, most of them.
You talked about how it's the products you have there are perishable. I wonder how you think about dealing with the climate here, because I know there are ways to garden around the climate or to garden in ways that work with the climate. But then you've also got hailstorms like 2013 or 30 days of 100 plus temperatures like we had last summer, and like those are things that sometimes there are limitations in how you can protect the grounds of the garden.
I think you just accept it as part of it. It makes opportunity to do something different. You learn what does and doesn't work. And when those hail clouds come, it's upsetting and that's one thing I did see that my grandparents did. I remember my grandpa, when he was very young, or when I was very young, he did everything right. And all the farmers understand that. They do everything right. And then a hailstorm comes up and destroys it all. And it takes a little bit, you always have to be looking forward, I guess, because, it wiped it out, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to clean it up and we're going to go forward, or we're going to change this up a little bit, or it makes opportunity to force you into doing something a little different. But I think it takes a little bit of toughness because, I guess you could let that just get you down. Yeah. And you could give up. But I look forward to the next year. Okay, next year was not going to hail. Okay. But the heat is hard too. Luckily, I like heat. I'm good up to almost 100, and then after that, I'm like, okay, it's hot. But I can work out in that and enjoy it and pretty well. So, there's some limitations by the heat. There's some plants we can't grow, but we just do our best.
On the educational side, I've noticed, the last 10 or 15 years, sort of a trend in people who are planting the types of plants that work well in heat and dry conditions and drought conditions, instead of just planting, whatever Home Depot tells you to plant in your garden. Right. Do you see that the Botanical Gardens has a little bit of an educational side where you can say, look, this is the kind of thing you need to plant here, these grasses or this kind of ground cover?
Definitely, yeah. You can come out and see that if we can grow it, you can grow it. We're not, magic. We might know some tricks, which we're completely happy to share.
Mm-hmm.
I think because plants and everything else has gotten more expensive, education is becoming more valuable because it's hard to spend a bunch of money and then put it in the ground and it just was the wrong thing. So I think they're doing a little better job seeking out that information and trusting local nurseries a little better than they used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite corner of the botanical gardens or a favorite plant? Or, I mean, is there a place there that you find yourself drawn to?
The other day, and I think it just changes. It changes all the time. So I enjoy the conservatory in the winter. Like today, it's a fantastic tropical place to be. But it really changes with the dynamics of the gardens and how it looks and how much focus I'm putting on it. So, no, not so much.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to ask, just because, you're in a position where you interact with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's because of events. Sometimes it's because of educational stuff or people are just coming to see. And you are intimately involved with like growing things here in this area, which, requires that kind of resilience. And I wonder, like, if you've learned something about maybe the mindset of the people who live here, how we deal with a harsh landscape, an arid landscape like this. Like, what does it tell you about Amarillo people?
Well, I think the people here are tough. They really are, because it kind of requires it. You have to be kind of independent, that mindset of do it yourself if you want it done right. And I stay here because of the people, not the climate. I told you I like the climate, but there's better climates.
Oh, yeah.
To garden. But the people are great here. I could have left at any time and had no real roots here until I do now. My family's, I've got 7 kids that are all still here in the area. And, for us to leave now, it would be really hard. They're, having grandkids and stuff. But I do get job offers around and they're tempting. But friends, church, family, it would be hard to leave Amarillo. It sure would.
This week's episode is supported by SKP Creative, and the team there asked me to talk about the Amarillo Tribune. If you haven't heard, this is a new local nonprofit journalism project. It's just been around about 6 months. I'm actually a founding board member, but only on the budgeting and nonprofit side. I don't write for the Tribune at all. Jackie Kingston is the CEO and executive editor, and she has helped build the Tribune into Amarillo's first community-supported, digital-only news organization. It provides free public service journalism about Amarillo and this area, and they're just doing such great work. It's a daily publication that provides local coverage about all the issues we care about, including city government. So SKP invites you to support the Tribune with a monthly gift or a one-time gift, but reminds you that content at AmarilloTribune.org is always free. So learn more by visiting AmarilloTribune.org, and thanks to SKP Creative for the support. Okay, I'm back with Greg Lusk. Greg, this is the part of the show I call 8 Straight. 8 Straight is sponsored every week by Panhandle Plains Historical Museum and Canyon. It's the largest history museum in Texas, and I'm sure you know this. Its collection includes a number of fossils that reveal the Panhandle was once a swampy rainforest, including a fossilized crocodile-like phytosaur. So you can see that fossil. You can learn more at panhandleplains.org. I'm always fascinated by that.
Yeah, amazing.
Sea creatures found in Paladura Canyon, all that kind of stuff.
It's crazy.
Okay, when you think of Amarillo 10 years from now, what do you hope for?
10 years from now, I really hope for some of these projects get underway. One thing that's really bothering me, and I would really like to see, Amarillo is pretty trashy. Mm-hmm. Not this neighborhood, it's a beautiful neighborhood, but a lot of Amarillo, if you drive down I-40, I'm not talking about just necessarily buildings in some areas that need repaired, but there's just a lot of trash. Yeah. And that bothers me a lot. I see that everywhere I go, and I hope that the people of Amarillo's mindset changes. I don't know if it's taking pride in themselves or their community, or just why. I grew up in the 70s where, the pollution was a big deal. There was all kinds of advertisements, give a hoot, don't pollute. I remember that. And the Native American that was crying when he looked at, and they made a real impact on me, and we just recently got back from Chicago or last fall, and I was very impressed how clean it was, really clean. And I asked an Uber driver about it, and he said, yeah, we consider ourselves the clean New York. And so they had put out a real effort, and I'm like, well, this is a large city, and if everybody in the city is buying into this, why can't we do that in Amarillo? So I would like to see a cleaner Amarillo. I think people would take more pride in it. I think people would feel that better about themselves, because I hear some negativity about it's Amarillo. What do you expect? I think we could change that mentality that, we're not just, we are a special place. I think there's a lot of special people. It's situated in a special place in our country. And I think we can improve on that by just taking care of our surroundings a little better.
I fully agree with that. I think that's a great idea. Other than wind, which is probably related to the trash problem, what does this area have too much of?
I think just that some negativity within of it's maybe seems like people feel like we're kind of second class. Some people do. I think that's harder. I think it makes it easier for our kids to grow up and leave. Yeah. And because if people are talking down where they're at, some places anywhere has got to be better. Right. And so I think that's negativity.
That's just a mindset problem. That, there's no external factors you have to fix for that. Like you said, it's a good place. But if we keep telling ourselves it's not, then...
Exactly.
What does this area not have enough of?
I think it doesn't have enough inexpensive recreational activities for kids and teens. The teens really struggle, I think. About all they do, there's some fun things, but they're, some expensive and outdoor, easy things just to go and do. Ride bikes. I mean, I know a lot of people ride bikes, but it's treacherous and the traffic. And I know some improvements have been made, but compared to some places where they're just larger parks and parks that there's more to do than just walk around, we need activity.
Okay. What's your favorite local neighborhood?
Wolfland. Mm-hmm. I like architecture, and I like all the grand houses and the big trees, and it's kind of created its own kind of environment over there. Yeah. And I just do appreciate that neighborhood.
I've heard arborists talk about an urban forest, with the really big trees, and you sort of create that when you plant them, and it cools down a little more than other neighborhoods, maybe. But.
And I appreciate that in a lot of Amarillo, they're requiring that kind of planting. It's going to be years, but it'll happen. So I think they've copied that well, and it's going to be nice in time.
What's your favorite local restaurant?
I like just eating. I like kind of authentic. I'm not into necessarily a lot of atmosphere. Usually the atmosphere is created by who you go with. Yeah. Although there are definitely some better places than others. But like El Tejavan, it's just basic, authentic kind of place. But any place like that where you just see a family doing it and they're working hard and they're creating something unique, I like that. Okay.
What's your favorite local nonprofit other than your own?
Well, Toys for Tots.
All right.
My wife's the director of that.
Okay.
So, but no, that is a great nonprofit. It's was started by the Marines 74 something like that years ago. All the money given to that, it's a volunteer position, and it all goes directly to toys. And I see the books on it. That's what they require. And it goes directly to the kids. And the need in Amarillo there's just a lot of kids that are hurting. Mm-hmm. And it's sad that kids don't get something or something nice, because they give a great deal to these kids. Very nice. It's the way it's set up. It's just not just a toy. The parents fill out a questionnaire, and they put toiletries and all sorts of different toys based on their age and their sex and their interest. And so it's carefully thought out, and volunteers shop for each child individually, knowing what they like and their age and all that. And it's customized to them. And I think it's a great, it's not feeding someone, but I think it makes a remarkable impact on these kids.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Botanical Gardens. It's bringing joy and delight to people. So
yeah, memories.
There's value in that. What's the most underrated aspect of living here?
I think just our position in the country, how quickly we can get to different areas. The mountains are close by. Really, it's not that far to the coast. I think just the way we think about ourselves and here is all underrated.
Okay. Last question. When was the last time you visited Cadillac Ranch?
Well, I drive by it. I live west of town, so I drive by it twice a day.
Okay.
To get out to actually see it, I have some nephews and nieces from Florida who live in Florida, and we took them out there on a very hot day several years ago and bought spray paint and painted. That's a place that's really filthy.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
And that is what people see, and they think of Amarillo.
That's the one place they stop.
Yes, so I wish we could. And I'll be honest, I don't go out there and pick up trash either. But I think it's the thing we're known for. I mean, you can, because I live out there, you can almost never pass that place and there's not someone there.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, during a tornado, during a snowstorm, slopping through the mud. Sometimes just like, look at those crazy people. It's 15 degrees out, and they're walking out there to see those crazy Cadillacs. So,
yeah.
Unique.
It's such a draw. I agree that a little more infrastructure out there to kind of clean it up might be really nice.
And maybe that's the place we need to start.
Yeah.
Right out there, because it makes such an impact on us, and it's kind of sets the stage.
It does. Yeah. First impressions are not always great.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so that concludes the 8 straight questions. I like to close by asking my guests to endorse something. So what's one thing you would like listeners to know about or to experience?
I think just maybe a very broad, just get involved with doing something that helps somebody else out.
Okay.
Regardless of what that is. There's so many different things, so many different interests, opportunities out there, whether it's the gardens or Toys for Tots or another agency. They really need help. Good help's always needed. But do something that does something for someone else. And I think it lifts you up in the meantime. I know I did many, many years of prison ministry. And I always left there thinking that I took much more than I gave. And just do that. Just lift someone else up.
All right. Greg Lusk, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That was fun.
And that concludes the episode. I want to say thanks to Greg for the interview. You can learn more about the Botanical Gardens at AmarilloBotanicalGardens.org. Thanks to SKP Creative, the Amarillo Tribune, and Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for supporting the podcast. Thank you for listening. Hey Amarillo exists on a weekly basis because of listeners like you and the local people who support it financially through patreon.com/HeyAmarillo. Hey Amarillo's executive producers include Patrick Burns, Jason Burr, Katie Linger, Corey Burns, Wes Reeves, Josh Wood, Cindy Graham, and Barbara and Jim Witten. This has been episode 392. My name is Jason Boyett, and I'll see you next week.